Did you know that trauma experienced in your family generations ago is still acting on you here and now? If not, then keep watching. I'm Dr. Morgana McCabe Allan, co-founder of the Manifesting Institute, and my PhD and life work are on how our identity and reality are co-created through all of the people, places, things, ideas, beliefs, and so much more that we engage with. And one of the things that is a huge part of that is our own bodies and our embodied states. Our embodied states are informed by not just the things that we experience, but the things that were experienced generations ago. Now, you might wonder what that means, but epigenetics is where genes can be switched on and off due to certain experiences, especially trauma. And so if trauma affects genetics generations ago, that still is passed down through the family line. And I'm going to take you through my family journey so that you can see what that looks like. We're going to rewind from here, from where I am now. Now, I sit here today with you, a very much healed, but still on my journey, successful, multiple business owner with a PhD. But 20 years ago, I was a stripper with severe mental health issues, suffering from post-traumatic stress, from a decade of abuse and toxic relationships around about me, from eating disorders and depression, and just a very, very, very bad decade, actually. If you go back earlier into my childhood and you start to look at my mum's life, my mum wasn't the most engaged, emotionally available parent. She was very present. She was very kind in her own way, but she herself had suffered from severe physical abuse throughout her entire childhood at the hands of both of her parents. So she had never had true safety. She'd never experienced what safety really meant, which meant that she couldn't create it in my home for me, which is how abusers were able to come into our home and surround our family. Now, I don't judge my mum for that. I've done a huge amount of healing around about that relationship, and we're very close. What I want to look at next is, how did that come into her life? When we look at my grandmother. My grandmother's mum died when she was very young. She was biracial. Her father was Black, but he actually was passing as Native American over here in the UK. Now, we don't completely know whether or not my gran knew about that. We only found out about it through doing, family tree and such like when she was on her deathbed. What we do know is that she experienced the direct consequences of racism in her childhood significantly through bullying that she herself experienced, but also because it wasn't the done thing for a person of colour to be raising a child on their own, especially not a man, because of the way that social structures were back then. And so he couldn't raise her alone, and she went up going through foster care, which was incredibly traumatic for her. And again, there were multiple kinds of abuse associated with that. And so she didn't know what safety was. She didn't know how to create it. She didn't know how to feel it inside of herself. She didn't know what love was. She didn't know any of those things, so she couldn't create them for her own child. Go back a little bit farther, and my family were slaves on a plantation. Now, you might argue that, yes, but that's all social, Morgana. And yes, there is very much a social component. There are learned patterns, there are behaviors, there are ways of speaking to people, there are ways of treating people, there are emotional availabilities and things like that, which are social. But there's also a genetic component as well, where we can see that certain genes are switched on and off. For example, genes associated with premature babies and things like that are trauma related. And research shows that even where people are not raised in an environment, that those patterns are present for them. So even if the pattern is not socially reproduced, the trauma still reproduces in other ways through that genetic component. And so the reason that I'm sharing this today, and this is quite a sort of heavy thing for me to share, especially if you've just met me, and then I appreciate you sticking with me through this, is because even when we don't know it, we still carry the imprints of trauma. There is no human being on this earth that is trauma-free, because culture is trauma. Culture is the act of removing parts of us that don't fit the mold nicely enough in order to try and make us fit better so that we can all stack one beside the other conveniently. And that's worked to allow us to have huge, big societies and create all these incredible technological advances and all these other things. But it comes with major downsides. And those major downsides include people not being able to be who they truly are. There not being space for that. The denial of things that are inside people that need to be expressed and explored. Whether that is an artistic side. So to go back to my family story, both my grandmother and my mum had very artistic sides to them that were not expressed. They both were actually given opportunities, or opportunities were available for them to go to art school, and they weren't allowed to go because of cultural reasons and financial reasons and things like that. And I say financial reasons loosely because there definitely was the possibility for their siblings, for example, but the possibility wasn't extended to them. We deny parts of who we are ourselves, and parts have been denied before we were even born. Parts are denied by the cultural pattern that we're inside. Parts are denied by the family pattern that we're inside. And we don't know and understand all of this. All that we are left with is the feeling that we don't really completely belong in our own lives, that we don't really know who we are, that we can't express everything that we desire to express, that we can't be whole, and we don't know why. And so if that is something that you can identify with, if you feel like something is missing and you're starting to think maybe that something is inside of you, then we would love to support you, to help you to explore what that really means, and to do some of this deep dive work that helps you to figure out who you truly are and what it is that you truly want to experience in your life. These are the conversations that we're having inside the Manifesting Institute, and we would love to continue to have them in there. So please do come and check out what we're up to. Have a great day. Bye.